Good afternoon, and welcome to the City Club of Cleveland. My name is Jan Roller, and I am president of the Board of Directors of the club. Our speaker today is Chief of Staff of the United States Army, General George William Casey, Jr. General Casey commands a military force, including reserve and guard forces, of more than 1 million men and women. He oversees a budget of $142 billion, with an additional $83 billion for overseas contingency operations. Those overseas contingency operations reflect that our country is at war, in fact, 2 wars. As we continue to work to stabilize Iraq and fight to prevent the return of the Taliban control in Afghanistan and the sanctuary it likely provides for al-Qaeda. The Middle East is a challenging place. Centuries of cultural, tribal, and religious conflicts have proven difficult to outsiders to understand. And here in our country, military policy is set by civilian elected officials, the President and Congress. And even as we meet here today, the administration is assessing policy factors and conducting a major re-examination of what our strategy will be going forward. Today's reality is that there are more than 150,000 U.S. troops in that region, the majority of whom are soldiers in the United States Army. Every day, these soldiers face considerable danger, not just from combat, but also from simply driving place to place. Indeed, October was the deadliest month for American troops in Afghanistan, the highest since the war began in 2001. I am sure the vast majority of Americans feel an incredible pride and respect for those courageous men and women. And General Casey, we here in Ohio, who have lost many sons and daughters, want you to know our gratitude for their service and their sacrifice. General Casey was born in Japan during Allied occupation and grew up on Army posts in the United States and Germany. His father, General George William Casey, was killed in 1970 in Vietnam when his helicopter crashed en route to a hospital to visit wounded soldiers. General Casey, Jr. graduated from Georgetown University's Edmund A. Walsh School of Foreign Affairs and received his master's degree from the Joseph Corbel School of International Studies at the University of Denver. He was commissioned through the Army ROTC in 1970, following his graduation from Georgetown. He then began to climb the ranks of the Army, serving in critical positions in Germany, Bosnia-Herzegovina, and the Pentagon. In June 2004, he became senior coalition commander in Iraq, replacing Lieutenant General Ricardo Sanchez. As military commander, he focused on training Iraqi forces, limiting the role of American forces, and transferring the burden for providing security to Iraqi forces. In February 2007, General Casey was elevated to Chief of Staff of the Army, and he relinquished his command in Iraq to General David Petraeus. General Casey's Army is stressed after 8 years of war. And though professional and resilient, some say it is strained and frayed, both its people and equipment. He must follow the policies set for him in the current conflicts. And he must also look ahead, developing strategies that will ensure that recruiting goals are met for an all-volunteer force, provide the best possible equipment for our troops, and transform the Army to face the types of challenges we see now and in the years ahead. General Casey, that's a pretty big job. We are very honored and proud to welcome you here to the City Club podium. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome General George Casey.
Thank you, General. Thank you. All right, please. Thank you very much. Thank you, please. Whenever that happens, I'm always reminded of a story. So where's Gary? I'll try to help him along a little bit. But there was a prisoner of war camp, and there was an Air Force pilot, an Army general, and a Marine sergeant major. And the commandant came in one day and said, well, I have bad news, and tomorrow at dawn you're going to face a firing squad, but I'm here to grant you your last wish. And so he goes up to the Air Force pilot, and he says, Major, what's your last wish? And the pilot says, "I'd like to have my last meal by candlelight with a beautiful woman." He says, "It will be done." He goes up to the Army general and says, "General, what's your last request?" The general sucks himself up to his full height of 5'9" and says, "I'd like to address the troops one more time." He said, "It will be done." He goes over to the crusty Marine Sergeant Major and says, "Sergeant Major, what's your last request?" He says, "I'd like to be shot an hour before the general starts talking." So I hope you don't feel that way by the time I'm done here. What a wonderful smattering of folks as I've gone around and said hello to some of you, but lots of veterans. And I'll recognize Bill Perry, who I saw, I guess, in 2008 in the Capitol Rotunda, as we as a country were celebrating the 60th anniversary of Truman's executive order to desegregate the military. And he spoke very movingly, and I've used his words in other speeches, because he talked about how hard it was for the twos. They used to call themselves the twos because they had Officer Club 1 and Officer Club 2, NCO Club 1 and NCO Club 2, Enlisted Club 1 and Enlisted Club 2. And at the end he said, "America, it's about time. What took you so long?" So Bill, it's wonderful to see you again. Recognize Bill Willoughby here, our civilian aide to Secretary of the Army, who helps us up here in the Ohio area. So thank you very much. I'm here largely because of Don McGrath, who he and I, when I was Lieutenant Colonel, he was a major, used to work for the Chief of Staff of the Army. I'd write the speeches and he did the public affairs. What a team. What a team. And recognize his wife, Ginger, whose maiden name just happens to be Casey. I don't know where that comes from. Anyway, what I'd like to do is just talk to you for about 20 minutes here about the Army and about how we see the future security environment. Because just as Jan said, my responsibility is to prepare forces for the current war, but also to make sure that we have the Army that the nation needs for the future. So I'll just talk briefly about how we're doing and where we're going. It's no surprise to you that we're in our 9th year of war. And as an Army, we have been at the forefront of that war since September 11th, 2001. And it has stretched us, and it has stressed us. But we should not forget that we have also, in that period, liberated 50 million people from tyranny and terror in Iraq and Afghanistan. And that's something that we should not lose sight of. Over 1 million men and women have deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan. Over 5,000 of them have given their lives. And yet another 12,000 have been decorated for valor. And that speaks volumes of the quality of men and women in our armed forces. Last year, over 275,000 men and women from all over this great country enlisted or re-enlisted in the Army Guard, or the Army Reserve. Every one of them knowing that they would go to war. So again, you should feel very proud that across this country we still have men and women like the ones here who reflect the values and ideals that this country stands for and believe in them enough to go forward and serve in a time of war. So how about a big hand for all the veterans that are here today. Now, just a little description about the Army, because Jan talked a little bit about it in the introduction.